exploring two columns. At the conclusion of this lesson, you will be able to create a crosstab and a scatter chart in the Apps Labs Data Visualizer. You will be able to draw conclusions by reading crosstab and scatter charts, and you'll explain the reasons that someone would create either a crosstab or scatter chart in order to explore two columns of data. Now, in warming ourselves up, imagine you wanted to know which hour of the day you and your classmates are the happiest. Don't shout out which hour that is. I know it's 2:30, 2:40, but what kind of data would you collect? And how do you think you would analyze it? Pause the video and jot down what data do you need and how do you think you would analyze it? Okay? Now, in class, I would ask you all to share out. Since we're not in class and this is a video, I'm going to tell you that hopefully I've heard a lot of interesting ideas here and should make for some fascinating analysis. The main thing that I hopefully have noticed through your answers is that we need at least two different pieces of information, the time of day and how happy people are. That means we're going to need to start thinking about ways to analyze more than one column of data. Today, we're going to start thinking and looking at two different ways to do that. Bar charts and histograms are only useful for looking at one column of data. If we want to look at relationships between two pieces of information, like the time of day and happiness, we will need to find ways to visualize the data that look at two columns at the same time. That's what you're going to be doing today. If you have not yet, please pause the video, log into code.org, go to Unit 9, Lesson 4. Again, log into code.org, Unit 9, Lesson 4. And then make a Google Doc copy or a Word copy of the activity guide so that you're ready to go when we get there. So pause the video while you do that. All right, you're back. Now, we're going to look at this, okay? We've got working breeds and max lifespan versus breeding group of dogs. We've got herding, hound, mixed, non-sporting sports, terrier, toy, working. A crosstab chart counts how many times combinations of values appear. Arrows show where that row in the data table would be counted in the chart. So notice, working 12, I follow the arrow, whoops, down here, and I've got 8 and 1, whoops, and I've got another one here, okay? So it gets a little bit hard to see when we're just looking at these arrows. How many herding breeds live a maximum of 12 years? Which breed group lives the shortest? Which breed group lives the longest? How do you know? How confident are you in your answers? Okay. Over here, we have it all pulled together. Here's our crosstab chart. Here are some things you should have seen in the data. 4 herding breeds live a maximum of 12 years. The most common maximum lifespan of working breeds is 12 years. Toy breeds seem to live the longest. Working breeds seem to be the shortest. You can see the spread of life expectancies for different breeds, but it's not cut and dry. Let's look back. Working, okay, here's all this. Toy, terrier, okay? So working, we have lots of different working, okay? But the max lifespan here at 12. Here's working as 12, 12. Notice. Okay. Crosstab counts how often pairs of values in two columns appear. So notice that you had 12 and 12. It's useful for finding the most and least common combinations of values in two columns, for finding patterns across two columns, exploring two columns when one or both are strings. It's not useful if either column has too many values. The chart would become enormous. Okay? So again, it's just a crosstab. Now, you're going to practice making some crosstabs, and you're going to need your activity guide, ideally in digital form, which means you're going to go to code.org and you're going to download it. Okay? As a PDF, or not as a PDF, but as a Word document, or you can make it as a Google Doc. If you haven't done that, please do that at this time. Again, Unit 9, Lesson 4. It's right up here in the upper left-hand corner. Now, you're going to fill out page 1 of your activity guide. Make 2 different crosstab charts indicated on the sheet, it tells you, and then answer the questions for each chart. See how you're doing. It's not so much right or wrong, it's the process of making and comparing this data, because that's what they're going to expect you to understand how to do and what types of information you should be able to get from it. On your test, you might also be asked what would you do to analyze the data? And that's where you could say a crosstab, or a bar chart, or a scatter plot, which we'll look at next. Pause the video now and complete page 1. Take about 15 minutes. Okay, this table has a dot for each state. It shows the size of the state in square miles versus the order it was added to the US. Is there a pattern? How can you tell? Is there a pattern at all? Notice out here we got one way up here, way down here. Alaska, Hawaii. All right, scatter plots. These show combinations of values from 2 columns. It's useful for seeing patterns and trends between 2 values. Numeric data with lots of different values work well with a scatter plot. It's not useful if there's lots of repeated values, because you wouldn't notice a point on top of a point on top of a point. Now, complete side 2 of your activity guide. On Code Studio, go to Unit 9, Lesson 4, Level 2 or Level 3, I think now. Practice making crosstab and scatter charts. You're actually up to Level 3. If you have not finished Level 2, please finish that and then move on to Level 3. Fill in the information you collect in your activity guide. Should take about 15, maybe 20 minutes to finish up if you have to Level 2 and then Level 3. Pause the video and do those tasks. Okay, you're back. We now know a lot of different ways to visualize and find patterns. The data analysis process, we collect or choose data, clean and or filter data. That's important so that we can make sure that we're comparing apples to apples and that we collect, or that we consider all data that is the same. Visualize and find patterns. We need to be able to visualize and find patterns so that we can develop new information based on solid data. Now, to wrap up, this side over here is good for knowing what's in your data set at all times. What values are present, what's their range, where are the clusters of values, and so on. So how many columns? 1 column. How many values? If you have a few, make a bar chart. If you have lots of values in your 1 column, make a histogram. Think about the bucket size. Next up, on this side is good for finding relationships and patterns across different columns. You might start being able to see how changes to one value impact another value. So here you've got 2 columns. Are the values strings? Yes. In that case, you're going to want a crosstab. Okay? Are the values strings? No. How many values? If there's only a few values, again, a crosstab might be best, but if there's lots of values, a scatter plot would be best. You should be familiar with this chart and with this information because on tests and quizzes, you may be asked, given a data set where you want to compare two different values that contain strings, what would you do? You would use a crosstab. If you have one column of data that needs to be analyzed and there's lots and lots of values, what would you use to analyze it? A histogram. Again, know this chart. Takeaways: we can develop insights and knowledge about our world from manipulating and visualizing data. Manipulating does not mean changing it. It means cleaning it, filtering it, organizing it. Okay? And then visualizing this data. In particular, we want to find patterns so that we can make educated conjectures and decisions and predictions. When investigating two columns of data, we can observe patterns of different values. Different values move together or are correlated. We cannot know for certain the cause of the correlation. Okay? We don't know if they're correlated because of a third element or if they affect each other directly. That takes more information than just those two pieces of information. We have to delve deeper into the data and understand more about it. Now, we are getting ever closer to the end of the unit. Our next lesson is Unit 9, Lesson 5, Big, Open, and Crowdsourced Data. Get excited!